I often remember this episode from Mr. Bean where he went bird watching in a forest and he found two men there. So they sit in something like a caravan. It's open at the front, like a window. Have a list of birds that they want to see, and then when they see that bird, they tick it off their list. Oh, we've seen this bird, right? They're getting the gist. So Mr. Bean comes here one day and he's looking for a particular bird. In his list of birds, he has ticked off most of the birds. It's remaining just this one. So that's why it comes to this forest, right, where these birds are known to be seen. So he meets these two guys there and they are looking to see the same bird. So Mr. Bean joins them and they're all sitting together with their binoculars looking for this bird, waiting for it so they can make that final tick on their box of birds. Now Mr. Bean being Mr. Bean starts making noise with bag of chips, with this, with that. They have to practically drive him out. So Mr. Bean goes home frustrated. He hasn't seen this bird and I guess feeling bad that these men drove him home. He constructs this thing that looks like the bird exactly, uses cardboard, uses blah blah blah, and constructs it and puts it on a tree, at their backyard. And then he brings these men, collects money from them to see this bird that they've been waiting to see. And then this is the bird, at the back of his house. But then when they come close to, seeing the bird or taking the picture, Mr. Bean will take away the bird from the tree. So he'll be like, oh, the bird just went away, so you have to pay again to see it again. And this continues for a while until they realize that this is not the bird, this is just some construction by Mr. Bean. And then they left angrily collecting their money. And then guess what? Just as Mr. Bean was sulking and this man had left, the bird itself made an appearance. But then it was too late. So, what's this whole thing about talking people watching? The storyteller, you have to be as curious as Mr. Bean and these men watching people. I know it sounds like I'm a bore and gossip and what else, but we said it already that writers have to be curious people. We have to be more curious than the average people out there. You can do your watching in a very silent way. In fact, it is better you do it in a silent way because you don't want to disturb the environment you're in. If you do disturb with your eyes, with your gesture, with your expressions, you will be shut out, just like Mr. Bean was shut out. Do you get it? And then the bird you're hoping to see, the people you're hoping to see, you don't get to see them because you've used your presence as a storyteller to drive them away. But there is a way you can still watch them as a storyteller. You see them, you see your bird, and then you can tick off your box. And then, of course, because you're a storyteller, you can go back and start your writing. So why people watching? You watch people because you are fascinated about them. The world around you is consisting of people. You can't just be the sole character in your story. If you say, oh, I don't need to write about people. I can write about creatures, animals. Anyway, in the last video we talked about the vampire Edward and the werewolf Jacob. So you can be writing about creatures, but at the end of the day, you have to give them emotions. And the emotions that you can derive from to infuse into these creatures are from people, right? You have a dog maybe, or you have a cat maybe, and then you want to explain to people, oh, my cat is this. What do you use? Adjectives that usually we use for humans. My dog is very loving, my dog is very concerned. My cat is a very curious, crazy cat. Still human emotion or human expression that you're trying to confer on your animals, right? So even if you're writing about creatures, non-living things, you still put those emotions that you derive from watching human beings into those things. So it's very important to people watch. It's good to mind your business, but you cannot do without people watching. And that's where even actors, you hear them a lot of times. Oh, I got this character from watching people in my neighborhood. I know Bimbo Ademoye that a lot about her characters that she portrays and the sheer beauty in those characters. The fact that you even forget that you're watching Bimbo, who is educated, who speaks well, but then you're watching her in a movie like Breaded Life, right? And you're like, You almost forget for a moment that this is Bimbo, a classy, well-spoken Bimbo. Why? Because she has taken people that she has watched and she has infused it into this character that should be new to people, but then should be like, I've seen this thing before, I've known this person all my life. It's just Bimbo acting. So why can't it be like that for you as a writer? Why can't somebody read your book and they'll be like, I know this thing this person is talking about because I've seen this character in my neighbor, I've seen this character in just that person down the road. Or this person always behaves like this, and then it can get them laughing or crying or whatever, because the fact that it's the human condition that you are explaining in such an explicit, truthful way, right? I remember in school, I remember one of our lecturers saying, oh, the reason why a tragedy is because of how you feel after reading a tragic book or a tragic story. The fact that you feel pity and fear. So what's the pity? The pity is for the protagonist goes from a condition of grace to grass because of his hammer shell, his flaw, right? So why do you feel pity? Pity because this person is a person like you. Think you are up here, and then because of maybe what are some character flaws we have? Maybe guess laziness, procrastination. What else do you have? Communication issues, things that you've been telling yourself, oh, I'll work on it, I'll get better, and I'll rise, I'll shine. But these things that you take for granted in your life, right? You're reading a story and you see a character that was here. And because of these things that are normal in your life or that you're trying to deal with, that same character that you've been reading from the beginning of the story drops down here because of those same things that you take for granted in your everyday life. So what do you feel? Pity. Chai! This small thing, I make this guy become like this. This guy will be there like this. And then what's the other part? Fear. The fear that, wow, this guy that is a human being like me with the same issues that I thought were, I know everybody has their problem. We are all a work in progress. So these things we tell ourselves, right? And then you see this character that drops down here to a very bad end because of those same things. You feel fear, like this is a human being, and if this can happen to this character, this can happen to me too. Everything you see it's probably happened before. Every human you see has a kind somewhere. Even you are different, of course. If we put your prints on the paper, it will be different from every other person's own. But then your attitude, your behavior, are you one in a million? I don't really think so. Yes, we say that for romance, you're one in a million stars, you're unique, nobody's like you. Sorry to say, but there are so many people like you. Sorry to burst your bubbles, but I guess you know that there are so many people like you on earth. So that's the same way you watch Bimbo Ademoye and feel like you know her. As a storyteller, people should be able to read your characters and feel like they know them. Because if they cannot connect to your characters in a very deep level, it would be like you're just telling something or reading something off paper that doesn't really connect or make sense. There are sometimes you see some actors, in movies, and you're like, this guy can't act. Why do you say this guy can't act? Is it because he's not saying his lines? He's saying his lines. Is it because he's not trying his best to put the actions? I feel like he's doing that. If not, the director would not even allow him to continue. But you say, this guy can't act. This girl can't act. Why? Because there's something you want to see that you are not seeing. So you said, this person can't act. Meanwhile, the person is trying. There may even be tears for a sad scene. But you still said, this person can't act. Meanwhile, you who is saying this person can't act, you can't even cry even if they flog you. But this person is trying his best on TV, right? And you're saying this person can't act because you are seeing the person, and the person is not giving you what you want to see. People watching. So for your characters to be believable, to be a delight to read, to be a delight to connect to, they must be believable. And I don't think that you have all you want to express in yourself. So where do you get this other material from that you want to share with the world? From people, right? People you see, people you interact with, all the mannerisms. How does this person do this? How does this person do that in setting? It doesn't even have to be something that is normal or something that is the everyday. I remember once we were seeing a movie that Mona Lisa Chinda was in. I'm so glad I remember the name. This was many years ago. I was seeing this movie with my dad and some people, and something happened. Somebody died. I think her husband in the movie. And the way she acted, My dad said, wow, she's a good actor. Now, let me shock you. She didn't do the normal, oh, hey, whoa, help me, oh, yeah. No, she didn't do that. She was silent. She silently sat down. And the way she did it, it was it was top bar. Seriously. Now, everyday movies we watch, or when somebody dies, there's a loud cry. But then, not every grief is loud and brash and raging. There's some grief that boils from the inside and they cannot come out. They just stay choked up here. So, who is representing that kind of grief in your story? Who is showing this side of grief, this grief that cannot be spoken, that cannot be expressed out loud, and the grief that makes you unable to eat, then the grief that makes you eat, or the grief that makes you want to just spend money and just go out and just see people, or the grief that makes you just retreat from everybody and stay in your closet not wanting to come out. So there are many sides of people that we can express in our stories for the same condition. This person may express things like this, and this person may not. So who is speaking for the people in your life through your stories? The characters you have, how are they speaking? Now, speaking, of course, I don't mean vocal speech, right? Alone. Who is representing the everyday people we will see, and even those that people do not know about, but we can showcase who is representing them in your stories, and how are they represented? They're represented through people watching. People watching can be anywhere. People are everywhere. You can be in church and you see a dramatic person giving a testimony, right? You can be at the mall and see how a mother is trying to stop her child from scattering things on the shelves. You can be in school and just watch the way a teacher teaches with might and power, but still with irritation. You can be anywhere and just have a whole new world to create and put into your story. So this is to convince and not to confuse you that as a writer, as a storyteller, you must people watch. So just like Mr. Bean wanted to tick off that box, we should also have the zeal to tick off, boxes of, oh, I've seen this, I can represent this in my story. I've seen this, I can represent this. I've seen this, I can tweak this a bit and represent this in a certain way in my story. People don't have to know you're watching them. I know this sounds creepy for people who are not story writers, but then it's just what it is in the profession. You have to people watch. It's important because people make up stories, right? We already said, why do we write stories? We write to document. So what are we documenting? People, places, events. And how do you document them? You watch, you learn, and then you put down. So that's it for people watching. Again, tell me whatever you want us to talk about as storytellers, or as people intrigued with stories, as writers, or as people intrigued with writing. See you in my next one.